Vasu. I'm a third-year international student here, and I'm studying environmental studies. So I'm originally from Mumbai, India, and so I went back home this summer, and I was working with a developmental agency there, and so my talk's going to be based on my work experience there, as well as, so I wrote an article at the end of the summer, and so it's going to be also based on that. So I want to ask two questions. How does it affect me, and why should I care? Okay, so how does it affect me? So this is basically a cartoon of two political animals, and I think the elephant is a Democrat and the horse is a Republican. And it's a conversation about the weather. And I'm sure, apart from the fact that they're political talking animals, we can all notice that we've had this conversation before. I'm sure we've all talked about the freak snowfall that happened last May, or the fact that the leaves started changing early this year. It's these obvious but little changes that affect us and will continue to become worse in the years to come. So even with overwhelming evidence against global warming, we still continue to debate as if it's something of a myth, and we don't really take it seriously. So small changes in the weather are how we get affected for now, but this might not always be the case. And we might not understand issues in other countries like clean water or weather, or even like natural disasters, but what we do understand is that the weather around us is changing. Okay, so I want to answer my second question. Why should I care? Should I care about a farmer that's trying to grow rice in a drought in India, or should I care about an earthquake that happened in Haiti in 2010? The answer is yes. Apart from obvious humanitarian reasons, we should be caring about what happens in developing countries and how it affects us. So I can show you a bunch of more sad and upsetting images, but that's not going to work, because after a while you'll get over the shock and you'll stop caring, and it won't affect you anymore. So instead I'm going to show you more silly cartoons and tell you why sustainable development is important and why we need to care about these issues. So I thought this was a really silly cartoon, and it shows an exaggerated scenario where climate change affects the world. So before we go on to what climate change is and how it impacts everyone, we should look at three levels of how it's impacting us right now. Okay, so this is like the local level or the everyday phenomena that happens in our lives. I mean, it can be something as small as a ladybug infestation in Ottawa to something as big as a coastal city is being submerged by rising seawater levels. So what we should be thinking about is how changes like these are going to happen in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and our cities, and what we can do to help that, or to affect changes with that. So then there's the regional or the national level, which is when we raise issues that are like ethical GMOs or shark fin trade or Kyoto Protocol, and how we address these issues. One way of addressing them is by raising issues as important as concerned citizens, and how we can change that is by influencing the political will. And lastly, there's the international level, which is pretty obscure, and we cannot really address this individually. So, for example, one of this is like oil spills, or for example, war, or even deforestation in the Amazon basin, or it could be something as obscure as overfishing in the ocean. So these are really big issues that we can't really accept. We can't really address them on an individual level. So the only way to demand change for something this big is to make sure that the political will in your country is addressing environment as a priority, and that's really the only way to affect change. And this has actually happened in countries like Australia, where in 2007, the new Prime Minister was elected based on a campaign to sign the Kyoto Protocol. And this entire campaign was based on that one, one issue. And he was elected because of that. So what I'm saying is that these issues can be addressed, and the political will can change based on how we react as concerned citizens. So recently, studies have shown that we do have the willingness to save our planet, but what we lack is the urgency to do this. And over the summer, when I was working at an urban planning agency in India, I realized that sustainable development is something that is very local. And it can only be changed if we as local people and local communities come together and work on these issues. So at the end of the summer, I wrote an article, and it was about ethical decisions that were taken at the agency and how we responded to them. And I realized that sustainable development is something that we need to work on from the developed world rather than from the developing world. Because we have the resources, we have the political will, and we have the ability to change what our political representatives or MPs or senators and how they can address these issues. So now I know that every country needs to address environment, but for developing countries, this is really hard, and it's like a real struggle because for them they don't have basic needs such as water or clean water or enough food, and so it's really more of a struggle for them to meet these goals. So what I saw working there was that we will be facing ethical decisions when it comes to development and the environment. But at some point, environment will be a trade-off with development. But if you want to fight global warming, and if you want to make sure that every person gets food, water, and shelter, we need to start working on it from the developing world, from the developed world. So working at the government agency I was working at this agency which was in a satellite city outside of Bombay, and it was called New Bombay. So I found that saving the environment was something that was a secondary character to most of the people working there, and for them it was a mantle that was taken up only in activism. So it was really hard for me to try to make them understand why environment is necessary and why we should be talking about this. And I was assisting an urban planner with developing this piece of land, which was originally a dry piece of land, but because recently the local fishermen had opened up a stormwater channel, and that used to let the seawater in. So during the monsoon, during high tides, the water levels used to go up, which made it a really good habitat for fishes and for endangered species of birds like flamingos. So it was a tricky situation overall. And so I realized that for any government planning agency, the urbanization pressure and the growth of population, which I'm sure most of you know that Bombay is probably the most crowded city in the world. And in India, the population keeps growing by the second. So for a country like India, where urbanization is increasing and population growth exceeds all other countries, the need for infrastructure and development is the highest. And this cannot be done without developmental agencies like the one that I was working at. So, but for most environmentalists, development is something that they look at in a very negative light. So it was important for me to make them realize that development is necessary, but so is the environment. And without development, the people living there would not have jobs, they would not have low infrastructure, and they would definitely not have low-income housing that the developmental agency built. So all development needs to keep in mind that people are the ones who are going to be affected. And one such case was when there was a political protest or a morcha, which came to the agency one day and decided that they wanted to stop all the workings that was going on that day. And it was the motive of a morcha is to stop any or all work that goes on in the agency. So without the agency addressing their issues, they would not let anything happen. And their issue was something as base as increasing the jobs in the community. So without the agency responding to them, they would have obstructed any work, and that would have been a bad consequence as a result of that. But the agency was smart enough, and they realized that the people need to be involved, so they put up a press conference and they had a community meeting, and at the end of it, the people were happy, they were satisfied, and everything was fine. So similarly, environment needs to be looked at in the same sense. We need to involve the local people in any decision that we make, especially sustainable developmental decisions that we should be making. And we should also give the environment intrinsic value, because most of the times we look at development and it's purely on an economic level, and we don't look at the way the people are going to be affected or how the environment is going to be affected. So in the wetland case that I was working on, I thought it was really important that we look at the social and the environmental and the economic factors before going ahead with any decision. So over the summer, at the end of the summer, I wrote an article which was published in Times of India, and it was mainly based on what I thought was sustainable development. But when I was thinking about this issue, I thought of this issue in terms of dirty dishes, and I thought it was a really good analogy to the fact that global warming is real and how we can all affect it. So at some point during last year, my roommate and I had our pile of dirty dishes in the sink, and we were no exception to procrastination. So they probably remained there for a whole 2 days before one of us finally gave in and started cleaning. And it was the minute one of us started cleaning dishes, the other one immediately offered to help, and it was good. So we got the dishes clean, everything was fine. So at that point, it didn't matter who had actually put the dishes there. It just had to be clean before a greater threat of rodents and smell was added to the messy situation. So similarly, someone needs to step up and address the existing mess that's affecting our planet. And I think for us in the developed world, it's easier to do this because we have the political will and we have the resources that are necessary to affect change. If we start doing it here, I don't think the developing countries are going to be far enough, and I think that is one way that we should be addressing this issue. And if you think if you're too insignificant to help change or to help affect this crisis, I want you to ask yourself this question. If not me, then who? And if not now, then when?